After being forced back into the wealthy family, Victor had no choice but to fulfill the arranged marriage with me. However, his heart had always been with Emma, the fake heiress. Even the son I had given birth to, after a difficult delivery, followed her around, calling her mommy. On my 25th birthday, I sat alone at home waiting. The night dragged on, and at midnight, as if on cue, Emma's social media post appeared. In the photo, Victor was smearing cream on both her and our son's faces, the picture of happiness, as if they were a perfect little family. By dawn, I could no longer endure it. I packed my suitcase and left. Just before my flight took off, I received a call from Victor. His tone was angry, while our son could be heard in the background, whining about wanting the breakfast I had made. Calmly, I replied, "I'm leaving. Go over the documents and sign them." The documents in question were the divorce papers I had already signed. I thought to myself, they would both be much happier without me. Chapter 1. On my 25th birthday, I got up as usual to make breakfast. As I sent Victor and our son Lucas off, I hesitated for a long time before finally speaking up. "Today is my birthday. Can you and Lucas come home early?" I knew full well that today was also the birthday of his first love, Emma. Asking Victor to choose between us was akin to humiliating myself. But I couldn't help it. When the doctor issued the critical condition notice, my grandmother, frail and worn, wiped away my tears and softly whispered, "Don't cry, my dear. I promised I'd stay until your birthday. Grandma won't leave before then." I hurried over to the car window before they drove off. Standing just outside, I begged in a hoarse voice, "Just come back for dinner. That's all I'm asking." All I got in return were their identical cold, indifferent faces. The next moment, the car sped away, leaving me standing frozen in place. It took a long time for me to come to my senses. They didn't explicitly refuse, which meant there was still hope. That afternoon, I went to the supermarket and bought all of Victor and Lucas' favorite foods. Afterward, I went to the hospital to pick up my grandmother. By the time the food was laid out on the table, the sky had already darkened. My grandmother carefully took out the gift she had bought for Lucas. From her bag, a limited edition toy race car. "Lucas should be here soon," she said, her eyes fixed on the door, eagerly waiting. I tried to persuade her to eat, but she stubbornly refused. "Birthdays are meant to be spent together as a family. We can't start without them." From 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. the food had gone cold, and still there was no sign of either father or son. I dialed Victor's number again. After countless rejections, the call was finally answered. The first thing that hit me was the sound of laughter and joy on the other end. "Do you need something?" Victor's voice was laced with impatience. I forced a bitter smile. "Grandma's here. Please come home and spend my birthday with me, okay? I'm begging you, Victor." "Jessica, don't forget your place," he sneered. "Today is Emma's birthday, don't ruin my night." Of course, Emma, the childhood sweetheart he grew up with, and I was nothing but the woman who came back and ruined her life. I stood there frozen, staring out the glass door of the balcony, meeting my grandmother's worried gaze. How unfilial I must be, I thought. Even now, I'm still making her worry. "Come eat the cake, Victor." Emma's sweet, playful voice rang out on the other end of the line. "The first piece goes to our Lucas, okay?" Then I heard my son's innocent voice. "Thank you, Aunt Emma. You're the best. I wish you were my mommy." My heart tightened and it felt like a dull, suffocating pain wrapped around my insides. Jessica, Victor's breath hitched, as if he wanted to say something more. But for me, it didn't seem necessary anymore. I quickly hung up, desperately trying to shut out everything. From the other side of the line, I walked back into the living room and met my grandmother's concerned gaze. Weak and pale, I tried to explain. "Grandma, Victor is busy with work, and Lucas had an extra class at his tutoring school." She nodded slowly as if she believed me. She gently pulled me down to sit with her. We sat across from each other, taking large bites of the birthday cake. The frosting was incredibly sweet, so sweet it made my chest feel tight and heavy. The soft light reflected off her silver hair, like a candle that was burning, down to its final moments. "Jessica, you must smile. Be happy," she said with a tender voice. "You are Grandma's treasure." Her voice trailed off, and suddenly, she began coughing violently. In the next moment, the hand that had been gently resting on my cheek fell limp as if the life had suddenly drained from her. Chapter 2. After Grandma was rushed into the emergency room, I was left sobbing uncontrollably, collapsing helplessly onto the chair in the hallway. Suddenly, my phone lit up with a notification from social media. Emma's latest edited video on the screen. It was the perfect image of the happy family I had once dreamed of. Lucas' cheerful voice rang out, "Happy birthday, pretty sister." He leaned over and kissed Emma on the cheek. I instinctively reached up to touch my own face. Unlike Emma's well-preserved, radiant appearance, my face after giving birth to Lucas was marked by nothing but age and exhaustion. The scene shifted and there was Victor, a man who was always so serious, but now his face was smeared with cake, and his eyes glimmered with affection and laughter. So he wasn't always cold and distant. When Emma was the one beside him, he could be warm, gentle, and full of tenderness. An overwhelming wave of fatigue washed over me, like a rising tide swallowing everything in its path. I turned off the screen. The light above the emergency room remained on, a persistent glow that seemed never-ending. Tears blurred my vision, and at some point, I drifted off into a fitful sleep on the hard bench. In my dream, I was back to the year I was found at 17. I was wearing shoes with holes in them, trying desperately to hide my worn-out pride and dignity. 17-year-old Victor stood at the top of the stairs, in a gray turtleneck sweater, looking like a prince. He looked at me in surprise, asked if I was cold, and led me into the living room. I followed behind him, my heart pounding like fireworks exploding in my chest. But then Emma appeared sobbing and knelt before me. "Jessica, I'll give everything back to you," she cried. From that moment on, the only thing in Victor's eyes when he looked at me was disdain. "Ma'am, we did everything we could. I'm so sorry. You can go in and say your goodbyes now." The nurse's voice pulled me out of the dream. Chapter 3. From leaving the hospital to arriving at the crematorium, everything felt unreal, like I was watching it all happen to someone else. It wasn't until they started pushing Grandma towards the cremation furnace that reality struck. The white cloth was lifted, and the flickering flames illuminated her pale face. It finally hit me. My only family, the one person who truly loved me, was gone from this world. Someone who had been so present in my life, now reduced to a small box of ashes. I walked out numb, clutching the box to my chest. When I got home, the housekeeper looked at me startled for a moment. "Ma'am, why are you back? Didn't Mr. Victor say he was taking the young master on a trip?" I understood immediately. They had taken Emma with them on their little vacation. In the past, I would have lost control, screaming and calling to demand answers. But now I'm exhausted. I swiftly packed my things. Standing at the entrance of the villa, I turned back for one last look at the place I had called home for the past 6 years. Memories of my first night here with Victor came flooding back. It was our wedding night, but everything was ruined because of a phone call from Emma. Victor had been so anxious that he kicked me out of the car. On the phone, she had been crying, saying she'd been kidnapped. "Victor, I've already given you up to her. Why does my sister still do this to me?" I walked for hours, in my high heels alone through desolate roads. By the time I reached home, my heels were bleeding profusely. After finally taking a shower and ready myself for bed, Victor barged into the room furious. It was the first time I had seen him so out of control, as if he was on the verge of losing something precious. His eyes were red and he demanded answers. "Jessica, I told you that little Emma is my bottom line. How dare you hurt her?" He said Emma's hand was ruined, and that she would never be able to paint again. That was the first time I saw him cry, and that night he forced me under him, moving over me like a machine devoid of any affection. We were doing something intimate, yet my heart was torn apart, leaving nothing but pain. He refused to kiss me, avoided my face and lips, sinking his teeth into my collarbone, as if he wanted to devour me. "Isn't this what you wanted, to be my wife? Is this enough?" His dark eyes, so close, were filled only with disgust and clarity. The way he looked at me then was exactly how he looked at me the year I was brought back into the family. A look that made me feel utterly exposed and humiliated. The sound of a car horn snapped me out of my thoughts. The rideshare driver was waiting. Chapter 4. The train sped forward, and the scenery outside the window rushed past in a blur. After eating a few cups of instant noodles and sleeping for 2 nights, the train entered the western region. Vast green fields stretched out, with herds of cattle and sheep occasionally running by. When I was little, Grandma used to lull us to sleep with stories of her youth in the Northwest. Now I was finally bringing her back home, where she could rest in peace. As I was pushed along by the crowd, while disembarking from the train, my phone rang. It was Victor. I figured he must have finally returned from his vacation and remembered me. His voice was calm on the other end. "Where are you? We should get a divorce." I didn't answer his question. I only made my request. "What are you talking about?" His voice wavered for a moment, surprised. He probably thought I was joking. After all, in the past, whenever he mentioned divorce, I was the one who would break down in tears, begging him to stay. But back then I was only holding on for Grandma's sake. Grandma is gone and none of this matters anymore. "Jessica, haven't you had enough? Lucas's stomach hurts, and he's asking for the porridge you made." He changed the subject, his voice full of impatience. I could almost picture him on the other end, frowning with a stern expression. I said, "Let's get a divorce." "Jessica, do you really think this will get attention? It's just a birthday, isn't it? I'll make it up to you." All right, see. After 6 years together, even now Victor still treats my departure like a joke. There's no need. The divorce papers are already signed and on the desk in the bedroom. I stated everything calmly. He finally realized I wasn't joking, and he let out a cold laugh. "Jessica, don't forget about the prenup. If you keep this up, you won't get a single penny." Oh, right, Victor has always thought he could control me, because he believes I love money. In the past, whenever he warned me, I would humbly apologize and back down. But now Grandma is gone. What good is that money to me? In the past, I naively believed I could move him. I exhausted all my energy trying to warm his heart. I tolerated his excessive behavior for the sake of our child, making excuses for him over and over again, suppressing the bitterness in my heart. But not anymore. Neither of them, father and son, are worth my compromise. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him further, and hung up the phone. The world was finally quiet, with only the occasional voice messages from my son. His tone went from commanding at first to softening, and eventually to a teary voice. "Mom, what are you doing? Dad is already working so hard. Mom, when are you coming back?" I glanced at the messages and deleted them all. As for Victor, I knew he was waiting for me to regret and beg him to take me back. But why would I regret it? After leaving them, I felt like I had been pulled out of stagnant water, full of life again. In the following months, I taught children to read in a small village school. Before I knew it, it was New Year's. The village chief invited me to his home to make dumplings with the children. Despite the scarcity of resources, they slaughtered a pig and brought out their most precious things to treat me. Amid the children's laughter, the phone rang, vibrating in my pocket. It was Victor. Chapter 5. I answered, and there was silence on the other end for a long time. A dry, hoarse voice finally came through the phone. "Happy New Year." The sound of fireworks drowned out his voice. Just when I thought the call had been disconnected, the man spoke again. He cleared his throat, sounding somewhat uncomfortable. "Grandfather wants to see you. Didn't you tell Grandpa about our divorce?" I asked in return. "Jessica, the company is about to go public. Can't you think about the bigger picture?" "So that's how it is." "No, I can't. You were the one who said from the start that this marriage was a mistake. Now, I don't love you anymore, and I don't want to continue." I spoke decisively. 6 years ago, a marriage contract bound Victor and me together. I should have realized from the start. Our marriage wasn't because he loved me. It was for the sake of family cooperation. And no matter how much favor Emma had in Grandpa's eyes, she was still just an intruder. When the family needed me again, they came looking for me. I never wanted to get involved in anyone else's relationship, and I wanted to leave it all behind. But Grandma got sick and needed money, and my so-called biological father threatened and coerced me. The night before I left with Grandma, they drugged the milk I drank before bed. That was the night Victor and I ended up in bed together. In a haze of confusion, perhaps the memory stirred something in Victor, and his voice grew angry. "Jessica, there was no need to continue this conversation any further." I was about to hang up when I heard Lucas' voice. nasally and urgent. Calling Mom, his tone was rushed, filled with anxiety. Seeing that I didn't respond, he awkwardly added, "I'm sick." In the past, whenever he got sick, I would be frantic, staying up all night to care for him. But now, I only responded with a flat "Oh. Mom, when are you coming back?" Children can't hide their emotions well. And Lucas's voice began to quiver with tears. "Mom, why aren't you answering my messages? It's so cold out here." "Lucas, come inside," came Emma's concerned voice. So the divorce wasn't even finalized yet. And Emma was already spending New Year's at their house. The cold winter wind stung my face, making me want to go inside. "I won't bother you anymore." "Wait," Victor hurriedly explained. "She came on her own. So he's capable of giving explanations now, huh?" But before, when I agonized over these little details, Victor would just watch me fall apart, calling me a madwoman. "Mom, Dad, and I got you a birthday present." Lucas' innocent voice chimed in. "A birthday present, huh? That was half a year ago." I found it while sorting through clothes, tucked inside Victor's suit jacket pocket. It was a necklace encrusted with gemstones. I thought it was a surprise for me, so I pretended not to know. But I waited and waited. In the end, I only saw it worn around Emma's neck. Back then, perhaps I was heartbroken, wronged, and deeply saddened. But now when I think back, it feels as if I'm just a bystander, completely at ease as Lucas cried and complained. All I felt was irritation. First of all, I'm not your mom anymore. And secondly, if you're sick, there are doctors. Coming to me won't help. Chapter 6. Time flew by. And after the spring festival, the children returned to school as usual. During the lunch break, I patiently braided the hair of each little girl, holding their hands and organizing them to go downstairs for lunch. "Teacher, what are we eating today?" "Today we're having..." Just as I reached the staircase, a voice stopped me. Mom, it was Lucas. He had grown taller, but he no longer had that arrogant air about him. He just stared at me blankly. I chose to ignore the desperate longing in his eyes. "Teacher, who is he?" "Don't be silly. She's our teacher, not your mom." A mischievous boy spread his arms wide, blocking Lucas from approaching. Perhaps Lucas had never been treated like this before. His eyes reddened as he looked at me, like a frightened little rabbit. I turned away and led the children downstairs. "Is everyone hungry? Let's go eat first, yes." After serving food to the last child, I felt a small hand tugging at the corner of my shirt. Lucas rubbed his grumbling stomach and spoke in a pitiful, "Mom, I'm hungry. If you're hungry, go eat something." For a child to come all this way on his own, Victor had to know. So, I continued singing nursery rhymes with the children and soothing them to sleep. During this time, Lucas stubbornly stood by the door. It wasn't until one of the children had a nightmare and woke up crying that I hurried to hold and comfort him. "Don't be afraid. It's just a bad dream." But Lucas rushed over and pushed the child out of my arms. It was the first time I had seen him behave so poorly and emotionally. He had always been strictly taught, mature and smart, knowing how to please others in every way, behaving like a little adult. But he had always been cold and distant toward me. His mother, "I'm so hungry, Mom." He raised his voice and repeated himself, afraid he would wake the sleeping children. I walked over and handed him a bowl of porridge. Lucas' eyes immediately lit up. He took it and started eating quickly, with big spoonfuls. But in the past, no matter how much love and care I gave him, it was all ignored. Lucas was born premature the night I had a difficult labor with him. Victor was abroad, attending an art exhibit with his first love, having almost lost him. I held my frail baby in my arms and swore to give him the best of everything. I learned all kinds of recipes, just to make sure he had the right nutrition. During his growth, no matter what I did, he would only eat a little. His face remained expressionless, neither liking or disliking it. Once he finished eating, I pulled him aside. "Why are you here? Does your family know?" He raised his eyes, nervously playing with his fingers, finally mumbling in a low voice, "The school is having a parent-teacher meeting, and a parent needs to attend. You should talk to your dad about that. I'm not your mom anymore, and I'm not obligated to attend." I squatted down to meet his gaze, and I could see the tears welling up in his eyes. After all, he was still a child. And he finally broke down crying. "Dad says he's busy. And am I not busy too?" I gave up my entire career for this family. When Lucas first started elementary school, I went to attend a parent-teacher meeting. The moment he saw my unadorned face, his expression immediately darkened. At the end of the day, he endured the mocking gazes of other kids as he pulled me toward the door, frowning with those eyebrows that were strikingly similar to Victor's. He showed the same. All the other moms are so beautiful. What else can you do besides cooking at home? You really embarrass me. That look, it was identical to how my biological parents sized me up when I first returned home, wearing rough, cheap clothes. It was exactly like that time I first went to a Western restaurant with Emma. She acted spoiled, and Victor naturally cut the steak for her, handing it over with a loving smile. Two worlds separated by one table. Awkward and clumsy, I tried to copy him, using the knife and fork with all my might to cut the steak, but with the wrong posture and too much force. There was stubbornness in my heart. He wiped the corner of Emma's mouth, then happened to look up. Just that one glance. It was like a balloon being pricked, and all my forced strength deflated into embarrassment. The plate overturned, saw dripping everywhere, a complete mess. Victor handed me a napkin. I made an excuse to go to the restroom. Just a few steps away, I heard Emma's tearful voice, like an anxious little rabbit. Victor, are you going to be taken away by her too? I instinctively froze in place. Victor's playful tone disappeared, and he made a serious promise. Little Emma, I only love you as for her. If it weren't for Grandpa's instructions. I nearly ran away in panic, because only by doing so, by not hearing those piercing words, could I pretend not to know. At 18, I was proud yet insecure, eager to please everyone, just hoping for a little love. At 25, when new life was born, my world began to revolve around Lucas. Now I live for myself. Chapter 7. Seeing that I didn't respond, Lucas went from crying loudly to silently shedding tears. When the lunch break ended, I continued teaching as usual. Lucas sat quietly in the last row, listening attentively. It's almost laughable. There was a time when I would tutor him. Back then, he would only coldly push me away. Dad said he'll hire a top school tutor for me. After the lesson, it was time for exercises. The children occasionally raised their hands to ask about their opinion homework. Lucas raised his hand too, looking at me eagerly. I deliberately ignored him. He borrowed a notebook from someone else, holding his pencil tightly as he approached me. Mom, I don't know how to do this. His poor acting was so obvious. It could be seen through at a glance. I didn't say anything, and took the pencil, showing him how to do it on the paper. Thank you, Mom, he smiled sweetly. When I looked up, I saw Victor. I didn't know how long he had been standing by the window. When he saw me, his lips parted slightly. I ignored him, pulled the curtains, and continued helping the children with their homework. By the time class was over in the evening, it had started to drizzle. After sending each child home, the sky had already darkened. When I returned to the school, my colleague Luis handed me an umbrella with a smile. He and I were the only two teachers at the school. This was his 5th year here. Let's walk together. I invited Jessica. You've worked hard. We were worried at first that you wouldn't adapt to this place. Of course not. As you're a senior, I can't afford to fall behind you. When I first found out that Luis was my junior at university, I thought it was a funny coincidence. We joked and chatted along the way, and soon we arrived at the teacher's dormitory. Suddenly, Lucas ran under my umbrella. Mom, you're back. Rain had soaked the hair on his forehead. After a full day of being bothered by him, I was tired. I didn't respond and turned my head inside. Jessica, are you refusing to come back? Because of this pretty boy? I turned around. Victor had just gotten out of the driver's seat and was standing in the rain. Luis looked uncomfortable because of Victor's words. I responded with a cold, do you think everyone's like you? Sneaking around with other women during their marriage. Victor froze at my words. Stunned, his emotions began to escalate. You're really going to stay in this dump and abandon me and our son, Jessica? You have to explain yourself to me today, all right? Some things indeed needed to be cleared up. Victor followed me into the dormitory. Father and son lived awkwardly around the cramped room. Exhausted after a long day, I poured myself a glass of water. Just as I was about to drink it, a large hand gripped my wrist tightly. He used his free hand to shove his phone in front of me. It was a photo of Luis and me, playing with the kids during class. The picture was taken recently, when a journalist came to interview us. There was nothing inappropriate in the photo, and so I looked at him as if he were an idiot. Victor, in a fit of rage, pinned me against the wall. You mean I can only bring it up if I catch you two hugging? How fragile and suspicious he is. Oh, so when it happens to him it actually bothers him. But when he and Emma were caught in close photos together, traveling intimately whenever I showed any discomfort, he would accuse me of overreacting and being dramatic. Victor, after the divorce, we'll live our own lives. You won't meddle in mine, and I won't interfere in yours. Isn't this the freedom you wanted? He glared at me, his eyes bloodshot. In the next moment, he flipped me onto the bed, pinning me down. My ankle was touched. He pulled a Band-Aid from his pocket and carefully applied it to the back of my heel. His movements were quick and precise, so much so that it left me momentarily dazed. You were hurt. At this distance, I could smell the scent of his clothes. The pine-scented cologne tickled my nose, making me sneeze. Are you sick? He asked, genuinely concerned. But it was like talking to a wall. We were together for 6 years, and every time I asked him to change his cologne, due to my allergies, he ignored me. Because Emma liked it, Victor never changed it. So now I didn't need the superficial concern either. Get out after kicking them out. I finally got a good night's sleep. Chapter 8. For the next 2 weeks, Victor didn't leave. Sometimes he would sit in front of his laptop working. One night, I heard a knock on my door again. Mom, I'm scared of the thunder. It was Lucas in the past whenever it rained. I would hold him and soothe him to sleep. But this time I ignored him. With Victor around, he would naturally take care of the child. But the next morning when I opened the door, I found Lucas still standing there, holding his small pillow. When he saw me, he sniffled. After a few days here, Lucas was no longer the clean and tidy boy he used to be. His clothes were wrinkled and there was dust on them. He looked utterly pitiful. I knelt down and told him, Victor taught you this, didn't he? Playing the sympathy card won't work. Crying and whining won't get you anywhere. What would a child know? If it wasn't for the adults suggesting it, how would he even think of doing this? Furious, I dragged Lucas back to Victor. Because Victor's company sponsored the elementary school. He was quite popular here. The village chief arranged for him to stay in the best house. When I entered, the light bulb was on, casting a dim orange glow. Victor was on the phone, frowning as if something wasn't going well. When he saw us, he rubbed his temples and immediately hung up. There's an issue at the company. Lucas will stay with you for now, I said bluntly. Take care of your son, and don't let him bother me again. Lucas immediately started crying and throwing a fit when he heard my words, refusing to leave. I used to feel sorry for you, but not anymore. Tears only matter to those who care about you. In the end, Victor, growing impatient, urged them into the car. I thought that would be the last I saw of them. But during class, I received a call from Victor's grandfather. He sounded anxious. Jessica, has anything happened to Victor and Lucas? I heard there was a landslide. Grandpa had been kind to me, and his only beloved grandson was here. At this moment, I couldn't bring myself to tell him about the divorce. I simply reassured him, don't worry, Grandpa, out of gratitude for his kindness. I went to check on Victor. As soon as I stepped into the village clinic, I saw Victor lying on a stretcher. The moment he saw me, he tried to get up. Jessica, I knew you still cared about me. I pressed his shoulder down. If you don't want to die, don't move. Where's the doctor? There was only one doctor, who was busy tending to other injured people. I grabbed some gauze and started bandaging the bleeding areas. Are you a doctor? Someone asked curiously. I got injured on the mountain once. My leg was almost broken, but I fixed it myself. Even the doctor was surprised. I joked with a smile. It happened during Victor's company retreat. After dropping my son off at kindergarten, I rushed over, only to see Emma sitting in the passenger seat. They were laughing about something funny. That whole day I was stranded on the mountain injured. When Victor arrived, the first person he carried on his back was Emma. His voice was filled with concern, overflowing with tenderness. It's okay now. Don't be scared. He gently patted her back, comforting her. Emma cried out in pain. I stood quietly to the side, So quiet I was almost invisible. Victor seemed to only just notice my presence. For a moment he looked conflicted, but when he heard Emma's muffled groan, he quickly made a, "I'll carry her down first, Jessica, hang in there." He hurried down the mountain, never once looking back at me, or noticing how pale I was from blood loss. Hang in there. In his eyes I was always the one to be abandoned. I didn't feel the same sense of hurt and grievance as before. Now the nurses around me were amused. I've never seen a patient so good at healing themselves. "You might just take my job," one joked. I casually responded to the doctor, remaining calm. Only Victor's face grew darker and darker. Finally, with a hoarse voice he spoke. "You were hurt back then, I didn't know. I thought you weren't seriously injured." I cut him off. "It's all in the past. You asked me why I can't forgive you. I'll tell you now, every time you chose to abandon me." As I spoke, Victor's face turned whiter and whiter. Chapter 9. The family soon sent someone to pick up Victor. Lucas cried out, "Mom, come home with us." Of course, I had to go back to finalize the divorce. Since I couldn't communicate with Victor, I would speak with Grandpa instead. "Grandpa, it's time for this marriage between Victor and me too. And you know, a forced marriage will never be sweet." Hearing my words, Grandpa began coughing violently. "Jessica, did that boy do something wrong to you?" Grandpa immediately grabbed his cane, ready to strike him. "You little brat, did you wrong her?" Victor knelt on the ground, silently taking each blow without saying a word. Watching the scene, I finally spoke. "Grandpa, I'm the one who wants to leave." I handed the bank book and card I had found to Victor, but he refused to take them. In the end, I placed them on the table. "This is the money you sent me all these years. I didn't spend it, and I never accepted your so-called compensation." Back then, Emma had taken my painting and entered it into a competition, afraid I would expose her. Victor used his influence to send me abroad, perhaps as a way to keep me quiet. Over those years abroad, he transferred money to me every year. He stared at the card, looking stunned. "Then all these years, how did you?" "In those years in Paris, I worked 3 jobs a day, washing dishes, doing anything I could. No matter how hard or poor it got, I never touched that money, because once I did, it would mean accepting that so-called compensation. I wasn't wrong, and you know the truth better than anyone, don't you? You ruined me so terribly. What makes you think I would ever forgive you?" I hadn't intended to cry, but the surge of emotions made tears fall uncontrollably. Grandpa, just learning the truth, clutched his chest in distress. "You ungrateful brat. How could you destroy Jessica like this?" "I'm sorry, I'll repay everything I owe you." Victor's voice choked with sobs, and he looked utterly pained. A few days later, I understood what he meant by repayment. Victor publicly exposed Emma's plagiarism to the media. With the evidence complete, she fell from a renowned artist in the industry to a notorious plagiarist. Overnight. Chapter 10. On the day I left the city, Emma found me in the bright, spacious cafe. She had lost her usual radiance. I ordered 2 cups of coffee, and when the waiter brought them over, she smiled and pushed hers away. "I'm pregnant, and I'm afraid it's not good for the baby," she said, unlike her usual arrogance. I saw a hint of anxiety and fear in her attempt to boast. "Oh, then I wish you and your family of 4 happiness." The blessing slipped out of my mouth. This time it was genuine. But Emma's expression changed suddenly. Turning around, I saw that Victor had appeared behind me. Without me noticing, he picked up the steaming hot coffee and poured it over her head. It was the first time I had ever seen her so disheveled. "Victor, how can you do this to me?" For her, she was in such pain, unable to understand why the man who once unconditionally adored her had vanished overnight. After Emma ran away crying, Victor called after me. "Jessica, the child she's carrying isn't mine. She's lying, there's nothing between us." He went on and on, trying to explain. I glanced at my watch. "I have a flight to catch. I'm leaving. You hate me so much that you have to leave." In that moment, his posture collapsed, like the life had been drained out of him. "You're overthinking it. I don't love you, but I don't hate you either." I cut him off sarcastically and got into the car. Victor's car annoyingly trailed behind mine the whole way. When I was about to pass through security, I saw him standing at the departure gate with Lucas, frozen in place. A passerby asked to borrow a pen, and I casually handed one from my bag. No need to return it. Thank you. He rushed off excited and hurrying to catch his flight. Victor's expression darkened, because that pen had once been a gift from him. It was back when he was going abroad to attend a summer camp. The traffic was terrible, so I got out of the taxi and ran the rest of the way. Sweat drenched my back. I saw my reflection in the glass. My first attempt at makeup was now completely ruined. Emma, looking polished and flawless, walked over, glancing at my disheveled appearance. Why are you just getting here? Flight was moved up. Didn't Victor tell you? Urged by his grandfather. Victor handed me something hastily. It was just a postcard with a few words to Jessica. Victor's expression was awkward, and I knew he hadn't prepared anything for me. I smiled and said thank you, I like it. A flicker of complex emotion crossed his eyes, but I didn't pay attention. What was he upset about? Why does it matter if I give away the pen? He casually gave me. As the plane took off and passed through the clouds, everything on the ground became small, just like the past, now left completely behind. After Jessica left, Victor found her journal in the trash. He realized how she had lived in France all those years. Over time, she had gone from a budding artist to making a name for herself in the art world. Strangely enough, even though Victor had plenty of money and time, he no longer dared to seek her out, because she had once said, "Can you please stop bothering me?" The most out of control he ever felt was when he rushed to the mountains overnight. But he lingered at the door, watching as she laughed and smiled at someone else, in a way she had never smiled with him, a happiness she had never had around him. She had painted her experiences there, and sold the paintings, donating the proceeds to the children in the mountains. He was the buyer. Behind the scenes, the village chief had once invited him, saying they wanted to thank him. That day Victor nervously waited, but when he saw her walking out alongside Luis, he cowardly ducked back into the car. "Where's the buyer?" he heard her ask. "He just left," the village chief explained. Outside, the wind and rain were heavy, the air misty. As Lucas grew older, he continued to write letters to her relentlessly. The mountain roads were long, and it took a month for them to be delivered. He would share his life with her. "Mom, I'm doing my homework well. Mom, I started learning piano today." His handwriting evolved from clumsy and crooked to neat and tidy, but not once did he receive a response. The night before Jessica's art exhibition in France, Victor canceled all his meetings. It was an important negotiation, and even his friends called him crazy. He simply asked his secretary to book 2 plane tickets. He and Lucas flew to Paris overnight. It was a snowy day. The street lights flickered on. The man stood silently in the snow, covering the boy's mouth. They were standing in the corner, facing the glass window. Inside was the painting depicting a family of 3, all smiling brightly. So this is how it was. So this is how it is. His heart felt like it had a gaping hole, with a blizzard sweeping through it. From then on, the person he loved was gone like the morning clouds, never to be found again.